Okay, I'm going to summarize what we did in day one of our conversation on internal controls. So if you were not in class, then you need to look for things that you may need to catch up on and add input into. Those of you who were in class may find this a good reminder of what we did and what we talked about. So on screen right now, you can see the beginning of our lesson in E360. You also see the link to the Google Doc where we began brainstorming and compiling our thoughts as we went through the discussion. So clicking on that link will take you directly to this, not that document, this document right here. And the first question we asked as groups is to define the terms internal controls, because we bandy these words around a lot and yet we don't really slow down and think about the point of all of this. And so each group took a section here and answered the question in their own words. So here was one group, and the other group typed in their answers on this page. And so if you need to provide your input yet because you haven't been part of one of these two groups, then go to the third page, enter your name there, and type in your answer. There is also a fourth page, so if someone else jumps into page 3 before you, then you move on to page 4 and enter your name there and your thoughts on the terms internals controls. Internal controls. Okay. The next thing we did is we were given a diagram that looks like this. And so it talks about, it shows this layer here of preventative controls. And we see these arrows, we see things coming in, and we imagine that these are probably attempts at hacking or fraud or theft, or maybe even inadvertent attempts or inadvertent errors. And then some of these don't get through and others do get through, and that's where we have detective controls coming into place. So the point of this diagram was to kind of consider the overall system that we employ and to comment on it. And so each group took a section. The first group answered the question, review the diagram, and describe what's going on. And so this was one group's input, and the second group's input. And so if you were not part of this discussion, then you need to come and add your own input. The next thing we did was split up an article on ways to prevent fraud, and that article is here in E360. And so we read this article, and each person was assigned one of the 8 ways to deter fraud. So for example, if you click on this link, you can then click on the full text PDF, read the introduction to the article, and then take one that has not already been addressed in our summary by the class. So for example, read the article assigned. John did the first one. Hunter did the second one, number 2, presented in the article of the 8. The next group picked it up from there. Emily did the third way to prevent fraud. Jessica did the 4th, and Kim did the 5th. So the first 5 have been addressed. Anyone else who needs to put in their input, come down here, and the first person to come in here and do so should pick up with number 6. And then there's number 7 and there's number 8. So there's 3 left that need to be addressed. So that would be the next thing to do. After doing that, we, for fun and of course a learning opportunity, went to E360, and in the test feature are a couple of What's Your Fraud IQ quizzes. The first one is on prevention and detection. Now your screen is going to look a little different. Your screen will look a little more like this. And so go ahead and do both of these. Okay. So for example, I'll do this one. And then you get a preview of the question here, but you can see the whole thing if you just go ahead and click over here. And the question is here. And then, of course, this is my answer. You will get just the possible answers to pick from. So go ahead and do these quizzes. They are really good ways for you to kind of check your knowledge. They're not graded, but they're a really good way for you to kind of continually improve on your knowledge and assessment of fraud. Another thing we did, returning back to our Google Doc, is we split up some words, or I should say not really words, but some alphabet soup. Someone took the socks and looked it up online and defined it. Someone else was assigned so-so, and they had to look that up and define it. Someone else got the PCAOB, and they looked it up, defined what it stands for and what this group is, and then finally the SEC. And the reason for that is because all of these come into play with the next large topic that we discuss. And so if you weren't part of this discussion, look each of these up for yourself just to kind of get a little more input on the players in this discussion on internal control. But in the end, it's this so-so pyramid. Now, I created a pyramid. They created a framework where they defined different pieces of internal controls to help people break it down into smaller pieces that they could then tackle and focus on. I created a pyramid because it made sense to me. And so we had that laying around the classroom and people looked at it. Before I show you that, I did find, and I want to show it to you here. This doesn't look like a pyramid. This one was more like a cube. But there are the 5 layers of internal controls: monitoring information, control activities, risk assessment, and the control environment. So these are the 5 major categories. The reason they made it into a cube is they're also looking at 3 different sections of a company, and then they've got some levels over here. This is a little bit more complex than perhaps I wanted you to start out thinking about. So not that this is bad, but maybe it's a little information overload in the beginning. And so we started with just a pyramid, and let's see if I can find that. Did I have that within the lesson? Sorry, be patient with me. I may just have it hidden. Internal controls. If I can pull it up on screen here, the whole thing, that would be great. Alright, so here's the pyramid, and let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Oh, I didn't want to find something. I wanted to zoom in. There we go. All right, so a little bit more difficult to read than my paper copy, but I created a pyramid. Here again is the control environment. Remember that was one that was shown in the cube. Where did my cube go? Well, I disabled my mouse in order to do this recording, and so it makes it just harder for me to navigate just a little bit. Here's my cube. Okay, so control environment is one of them. That is the bottom of my pyramid, but these are some of the items, some of the things that fall under that. And so those of you who weren't in class, get out a piece of paper, stop this recording, draw a pyramid, and write these items in for the control environment. Then write risk assessment for your next section, and that, going back to the cube, see there's risk assessment. That's another section, another category. And these are some things that would fall in that category. So stop the recording and write those things in as more detailed items that fall under this category. Then we have information and communication. Going back to the cube, there's information and communication right there. And these are some things that fall under that category. So add that to your paper document. And then finally we have monitoring and control activities. So stop this recording and add these things in as well. And then you will have a complete diagram picturing the 5 major categories of this framework and some examples of items that fall in each one of these categories. What we are going to do, we're going to pick up then next time going back to our Google Doc, and you can see I have a pyramid here, and in class we as a group are going to brainstorm and add some words here that summarize, hopefully in brief, all of these things that you see here. So a lot of this gets pretty wordy and can be somewhat difficult to remember, and so where we pick up in next class time is going to be summarizing that into something usable that you can then remember.